Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to Historian Stitch. Um, Obviously it's not Wednesday, so we're not doing How To Wednesday today. It is rather Friday, and usually on Facebook, on our Facebook page, I will do a Fabric Friday and go through and explain how to take care of certain fabrics, where they come from, how they're typically used. Um, kind of have run out of fabrics, at least for the moment. I'll start trying to figure that one out a little bit later. Um, but as it is Friday, you can still do Fiction Fridays instead. Um, and as the 19th century guru that I am, um, kind of starting with that. In a past video, I talked about the different layers that women would be wearing, but today we're looking at a very specific kind of fashion for the 19th century, that fashion being mourning. Um, the grieving process, mourning process, was extremely strict at this point in time. Um, Basically, you had three typical stages: deep mourning or full mourning, which is what you see here; half mourning, which you start to lose the black and start to gain a little bit more color, maybe some jewelry; and then you have your coming out of mourning stage. That stage in particular is mainly um, losing black entirely. You can wear whatever you want for the most part. Um, there isn't really set guideline for coming out of mourning. Whereas for the other two stages, as we will kind of look into for these next two Fridays, um, are a little bit stricter. What we see here is actually two stages of full mourning. We will get into that here in just a bit. Um, but to kind of give you all an idea of where this came from, didn't just pull it off the top of my head. Actually, these dresses are kind of what have, or at least this one in particular, is kind of what has happened over the past 3 years. Um, Back in December, I graduated from Shepherd University um, with a focus on 19th century American history. So, Civil War was a major part of that. Um, and we had to do a capstone. Capstone being the overall, this is what I've learned, this is how I've learned to use it, and this is the topic I want to try and apply everything I've learned to. My topic happened to be mourning rituals uh, from Southern women in particular, and how their lack of ability to mourn is what led to the post-war uh, memorials and different things like that. But I stopped um, when the United Daughters of the Confederacy started to take over, because that is where you start getting the, oh no, the men are in charge, they're the ones who need to, they're the ones that need to plan everything out, whereas their predecessors, their the ladies' memorial associations, um, were much more, no, women need to vote and they need to do these things, and we are taking care of the dead, not them. They're still wallowing in their own pity. We're going to do our own thing. Um, so about 1880s is about where I cut it off. But this is what has kind of come out of that. Started out with one book in particular that is a favorite of mine, Widows' Weeds and Weeping Veils. Um, Mine is thoroughly marked. It has highlighter, it has pen, it has questions in it. Um, and this was my starting point before the rest of this kind of appeared. Um, After going through that book, I ended up with, I believe, close to 100 sources for a 30-page paper, which is currently being added to. We will see where that goes. Um, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to thank Dr. Broomall for kind of sticking this idea in my head without probably meaning to. That tended to be how a lot of things went. Um, because 3 years worth of research has gotten me to this point, and going to kind of give you all a little bit of information that I picked up through that research about these dresses in particular. Next time we will do the half mourning version. Um, but basically, what we have in front of us is full mourning, the deepest stage of mourning. Basically, women would be adorning these clothes as soon as the death happened in the family. Um, and this would be upper class families. There's a lot of silk in these dresses. It's a very deep black in both of them. We have gutta percha buttons on that one. I have rubber covered buttons on this one that are possibly originals. Um, the designs of them are the peak of fashion in the 1860s. Um, so very upper class women would be wearing these, but that doesn't mean that not everybody would be aspiring to this level of mourning. Um, and basically, the aspiration for this not only comes because you obviously want to be doing better in life, um, but also because that the parameters of the good death that this stems from kind of request it. Not only is the good death a very old and well ingrained idea by the 1860s, technically actually started in the 1600s and then progressed from there, um, where you're the dying person is at home surrounded by friends and family, their conscience is cleared. Um, it's a very peaceful, quiet death. It's not violent, it's not untimely necessarily, um, but rather that nice, gentle one. And then after that point, the rest of the good death theory is that you are remembered by your loved ones, partially by writing, um, and generally trying to be better in life and kind of blaming it on the death of somebody, um, depending on what you read. Um, Men especially kind of went that route because they don't have to wear 9 layers of clothes, um, half of which being black once you get to the top layers. Rather, they have armbands, you can have bands of black around the hat brims. Um, you're probably wearing darker colors, but you're not having to completely change your whole wardrobe from the nice, bright uh, pinks, blues, browns, um, and delving into something so dark. Um, that's basically where the correction. Basically, because of that and how the men got to mourn, women had to take up the mantle of the rest of that good death ideology, where you have to, you want to be remembered, therefore somebody has to remember you. Um, Being in a time frame where expressing emotions isn't really smiled upon, um, you express emotion and how you're feeling and who you are through your clothing. Something we kind of still do today, but not near as strictly, because in the 1860s, if you did one thing wrong in your clothing, you are going to end up either in your local newspaper or just becoming the talk of the town, and that is not what a young lady wants. Um, Now, with these, um, we have 2 stages within the first stage of mourning. Kind of a confusing thing to say. However, once it's broken down, it's a little bit easier to understand. You have your 3 stages, as I already mentioned, but then looking at each stage specifically, you have, depending on who you are mourning and who you are, um, various stages expected within that stage itself. So with the full mourning process, we have a much duller dress on the, what is my left, your right. Um, it is duller because it is actually double layered. Um, easier through the skirt. It has the black broadcloth underneath that you can kind of see here, and then this sheer silk crepe over top. Now, crepe is technically very different than it was at the time. However, um, silk crepe is where the term widow's weeds kind of comes from. But they would explain that here in just a minute. But you drape your broadcloth with the crepe in the very beginning stages, because you are in the deepest thralls of grief. Um, Not only would you have the crepe here on the dress itself, but you would also be wearing it over your bonnet. Um, if you were, for whatever reason, to go out into public, you're covering your hands with dark brown or black gloves. Um, Basically, just to show everyone around you that you've lost somebody. And nice thing about the veil, not only can no one see in while you are able to see out, but they also can't see how you're feeling. Um, which could go one of two ways. It could either be I'm crying and I don't want you to see me, so I'm going to keep the veil down, or you could be like Scarlett O'Hara and not care at all, so you're going to cover your face just to save your pride. Um, Basically, though, with this being the fullest stage of mourning, as you progressively aim for one on the right, um, your left, my right, um, you're going to slowly start taking away this crepe. For this dress in particular, I would really not want to do that because you can kind of see it. There are pleats in the bodice. The sleeves themselves are pinned down. There's a nice silk ribbon here. Um, Eventually, this one's still technically a work in progress. There will be ruffles along the bottom of the skirt. So this one would be a major pain to take the crepe away from. However, they would have done it, at least in the highest thralls of fashion. Um, or, rather than having to take it all apart, you just gradually raise it. So you might have some pins on the side, get up to the apron, to the waistband. Just kind of pull it up so that it drapes rather than covering. Could do that all around the bodice and skirt itself, and that might be your way of showing that you're progressing through the deepest stage of mourning. Um, Once you're done with this, you can then take it all off if you so choose, or just switch dresses, um, and end up in something akin to this one. Um, this one is solid silk rather than just having silk cover it. Um, as I mentioned before, good approach of buttons, there's a lot of trim on it, so this is the stage where you're just about to take that next step into half mourning. So this would be what you're wearing directly after the death of the family member or friend. That is what you were wearing within the last month. Um, Again, this all depends on who you're mourning and where you are, who you are. A lot of what I found in my own research is that after the Civil War, most women never came out of mourning, unless they were fairly young. But even the young ladies were looking at it going, it's not worth it. I'll just continue wearing my dark colors and leave it at that. Whereas before the war, many more women, unless you were obviously much older, um, would just wear this for the required amount of time and then progress into their next stage of life, basically. Um, Now, I keep saying the required amount of time, mainly because, again, who you're mourning. Um, for the death of a husband, you would be mourning for a year and a day. That day set aside out of respect for the dead. Um, for parents and siblings, could be anywhere from 6 months, could be a year, depends on which books you look at. Um, for this one kind of bothered me just a little bit. For the death of your own child, it would be anywhere from 3 to 5 months. Granted, child mortality was so high at the time, it was kind of expected, but at the same time, um, there are many diaries, most of which you would be able to see if you could on the bookshelf behind, um, where women are sitting down talking about the death of a child, whether it's theirs or a friend's, um, and going through the process of, well, this is how they're dealing with it, and after this point, now the doctors are trying to give them laudanum, um, or some other sedative to calm their nerves, make them a little less depressed, although laudanum was not what you used for depression. Um, so there are various things that kind of went into that. But yeah, that's the basic gist of full mourning at least. Not sure if it will be next Friday, but one of these next upcoming Fridays, we will do half mourning. Hopefully, I will have my own half mourning dress done by then. I might borrow mom's. Um, but yeah, that's the basic gist of full mourning. Um, Now a little bit about the dresses in particular. Um, that one is bought, likely would have been bought even in the time period because of how much detail is put into it. However, um, at the time, that one would have been actually far less expensive, and likely would have been passed down from one person to the next, whether it be a family member or a neighbor. Mainly because you can kind of see it a little bit in the sleeve here. Um, it's faded. The silk has been so worn that it is faded. There are tears in the lining. It's kind of falling apart a little bit, but not too much that you can't wear it. Whereas this one would have been a brand new one. Um, Interesting thing about this one in particular, like I said, I'm still working on it. However, it is a near exact replica. The buttons are kind of an added flair that I put in, um, of one that is at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, um, where you have the three pleats in the front, there are three pleats in the back, the silk around the cuffs, the tall collar. That tall collar makes it a later 1860s kind of dress, but you still have that bell shape, so it's that weird 1863 to 1860, maybe 8, depending on where you are. Um, and then again, the ruffles will eventually be at the bottom. We're getting there. Um, but yeah, part of the interesting thing, as I was starting to say about where you would be able to buy dresses like these, um, there were specific stores set aside specifically for mourning. So as soon as somebody died, if you didn't actually keep everything from past funerals, um, you would be able to go to the store, whether it be your local general store or if you're in places like New York City, to a store just down the street that is specifically for mourning, and buy all of the garments, um, all of the extra crepe to put over windows, all shined objects, things like that. Um, so yeah, that's basically it for at least this version of our video today. Um, if you all have any questions, please ask. Um, I'm kind of thinking that after I do half mourning, we might do a little bit of the house and how houses would be decorated, um, as well as probably the jewelry that they would have used. The jewelry and the hairnets and stuff were all completely set aside. Um, would be a separate expense compared to the expense of what you would be wearing. Um, but yeah, that's basically it, and if you all have any suggestions about our How To Wednesdays or other things that I could talk about on Fridays now, please put them in the comments below, and I will see you all next time.